Welcome to this week's episode of the Indian Dots podcast. This week, we are joined by Harvinder Singh Mandir. I pray to God I've said that properly. You'll understand why in the next 2 minutes, why I've said that. This week, we did talk in depth about the farmers' movement, Sikh politics, Indian politics, Punjabi politics, the immigration bill that was passed in the UK, similarities between Sikh politics and UK politics, and also to round it out, why Karan's taking a week off from the podcast and Harvy's thoughts on it. Thank you. If you want to carry on and listen more, please do and follow through. See you there. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to episode 50 of the Indian Dots podcast. Big milestone, which means you've got to have a milestone guest. This week, we are joined by Harvy Mandir. He is the founder of Nationality.com and he's been a guest on before the podcast. Please do have a look at it. It's one of our biggest and best podcasts to date. And we're very happy to welcome him back. Harvy, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thanks. I'm very good. How are you both doing?
Very good. Karan's in a different location. Those of you that can't see. Karan, where are you?
I'm in Surrey. I'm very happy to be in Surrey. It's better than Walsall, so I'm told. Everyone who's near London or around London always says it's better. You guys always say it's warmer as well. I don't know where you get this from. But every time I come here, oh yeah, Birmingham to me, you guys always say this stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, fine.
It's true. London's what, meant to be 2 or 3 degrees warmer because of the pollution. Yeah,
London is, but I don't know. I don't know if the
I don't know how far it goes out to Surrey. Yeah, true. It's a very good point. Anyway,
can I make one real quick? Can I make one real quick correction?
Of course, you can.
I go by Harvinder, although Harvy's fine, but I'm more and more trying to use my full professional name.
I feel that. Okay. Harvinder Mandir. Okay.
Interview.
No. But the surname as well. The surname is Mandir.
Mandir. Okay.
There's so many people who do Mandir. So there's so many people who do something else.
Do you want me to restart the podcast for you? No. I don't mind. I can do it. I've got no problem accepting my bestie and doing it again.
In the interview, do you want to reintroduce our guest to one, please? Come on. Let's see if you get it right first.
Do you want to
start again on the podcast?
No, I'm taking the mic, but I'm not starting again. I'm halfway into the conversation. It's done now.
He's scared. He's going to
get it wrong. At least I know for the future. Why would I be scared? You know what's scary? What's scary is how close you get the mic.
He's doing it.
You're practically about to eat the mic, man. Relax. All right. It's okay.
You're not in the way.
Anyway, Harvy.
Interview.
Yeah. Stop it.
I'll get back to Harvy.
Full naming me and stuff.
I don't mind people calling me. I don't actually mind people calling me Harvy and saying that. I've never gone away from it. It's just when we do the introduction, that's when it's always give the full proper name.
Formal Lord. Okay. Does anyone call you Nojwani?
Yeah.
It's like, you know.
I get people who just call me Nojwani. They literally call me Nojwani all the time. Yeah, people say that.
How about the classic Singer?
Yeah, you get Singlets. There's another one. Have you ever come across people saying Babbio?
Yes.
No,
Babbio.
What is
Babbio?
It's like because you add like a sound to the end because Baba. Finish it with Babbio. You can get that chuck in there. No?
That's what makes it more. That's what makes it more banterish, kind of between friends. If you were to say "Kidda Babaji," and then be like, "Yo, you want to throw hands? What's going on?" I don't get it.
That reminds me of that video just Ray made. I'm not Gandhi. Don't call me that.
Yeah. That guy. Yeah. It'd be that. The other one I get sometimes is people, other than random people just pointing at me, but sometimes people like signaled. I randomly get that.
Yeah,
just go like that.
Yeah, that was a big video.
It's only got like 30,000 views. I don't know how. I've met all 30,000 Punjabi.
30,000 Punjabi saw it. Right? That's a lot of people. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's random. Seriously, the number of people say signaled. So as well as Nojwani, I get a few people who randomly say signaled.
Do they nod as well though? Do they say and then give you the nod?
Bloody better. Yeah, they have to. Otherwise it's
For those who don't understand the reference, check out the video on YouTube. Just type in Signod and you'll find the video by Nojwani.
Thank you.
See what I did there?
Good plug there. Very good.
Good plug there. Right, Harvy, the reason why we've also asked you on is because the farmers movement has obviously changed from when we last spoke about it. when we last spoke about it, I think the movement was just kicking off and it was getting traction in mainstream media. Then it disappeared. And then all of a sudden, the farmers' laws were then, the introduction to the new laws were then taken away. And there was another uplift in media coverage. Then it got passed and everyone was like, job done. But I know from firsthand experience talking to you, that's not the case. So could you give us a bit of backdrop into why, first of all, the government backed down? And then afterwards, maybe give us a brief explanation as to why this is actually not great news for us all.
So first up, appreciate both of you for actually calling me to come on. You wouldn't believe it doesn't happen very often where I get someone picks up the phone and says, do you want to come on and tell us a little bit about this? So props to you
Why
two
not,
for doing
though?
that.
Because you're the one who's out of my circle, you're the one that I know who understands the majority of things happening in India, considering that we don't get much coverage about it.
Expand your circles, boys. Expand your circles.
Is it worth it?
We need to leave Bhangra, man.
Straight up, I think I'm not the most knowledgeable person on this whose first language is English, but I'm one of maybe a handful of people who has a depth of knowledge on many different topics that would be necessary for someone to appreciate and understand if they were going to talk on this topic. So that's where I definitely fit that category, but there's not many of us is the other thing. And I think then beyond that, what we found throughout the whole of the last year that was quite interesting is a lot of people, I don't actually go, I've only ever been on one of them, but there's Twitter spaces now. People started doing that. Yeah. And then there was podcast after podcast after podcast. Most of them seem to center around people who were part of activist groups or organizations that were gathering funds to send out. And so they're usually the people who I think who become go-to. Now, that's not me just taking an aside. It's actually an important part of this whole process. And we'll come on to that in later questions, but I'll start with the first question you said. So what the government has backed down to a certain extent by repealing the 3 laws, which is not what their plan was. There's clearly been a back down there. That wasn't their plan to back down and repeal all 3 laws, but they have done that. The reason why I think they did that is there's it's multiple reasons why. But primarily it's twofold. One is that Narendra Modi saw that the amount of protest and opposition he was coming up against meant that he had to do something different in order to proceed. And the second reason is related to that first one. There's elections coming up. And the elections, and we're now 3 months away, 2 months away from the start of those elections. And as a result, he could not risk going this close into an election period and having this on his head and having it take up all of the column inches, all of the press coverage, because that's exactly what it would have done.
Would they still cover it though, considering that
yeah. No matter how much of the media you've got in your pocket or under your payroll, you can't remove yourself from that kind of motion. What also would have happened is during the elections, there would have been an exacerbation of that protest. It would have grown tenfold. There would have been the opposition parties would have helped to ignite that. They would have taken.
They would have used it. They would have used it. Yeah. They would have shone a light on it more, saying, "Look what he's done.
Get him out."
Totally. It would have been theirs for the taking. The whole thing would have been up for grabs. And I think he couldn't take that risk. Now, what's most interesting, I think, in this whole area has been what we've seen is, I used the word Narendra Modi. I didn't say the Indian government. I didn't say the cabinet. It is Modi who's doing all of this. And he is now proven, in my opinion, as being a larger than life character. And that's not unique to Hindustan. You see that throughout the world now. All of the world leaders we've got of repute are now larger than life personalities and characters who dominate. We're in a weird state at the moment that I've heard people talk about it as being autocratic, almost being, Kim Jong-il of North Korea is one that you would pick up as being one of those who was an out-and-out dictator. But I would say more than autocratic, we're almost in dictatorial rule in most of the major developed nations of the world. And If you look at the way that
Russia, China,
Putin, Xi Jinping is in China, has made a huge move in the last week. Hell yeah. Now, even though it's Biden,
even though it's
Biden, the Biden, because of his age, and because of COVID, hasn't been able to project himself and put himself out there yet. But that was going to be a major personality-dominated rule. And you're seeing that. I mean, you saw that with Trump, obviously, but even with Obama. Obama was larger than life. And that whole operation over 2 terms was about Obama. So we've kind of gone that way. But in India, what we've seen in the last year is that Modi runs shit.
Yeah.
Modi's the mafia boss. And everyone else is just part of the cartel.
Doesn't he have a history of this? Because he incited a lot of violence against Muslims when he was president of a state. I've forgotten the state name. But there was a bit of a genocide there, wasn't there?
Yeah, not a bit of a genocide.
Not a bit of a genocide, but essentially there was a genocide and it wasn't really picked up that much. Like even when it came to his elections, it still didn't stop him from rising to power now.
Getting elected.
Hence why I used that little bit, because it didn't really mean much to a lot of the voters, did it? Which is a shame. It shouldn't be like that at all.
It's been stamped down a lot by current affairs and historians of the time, and now. But when he was chief minister there, and what they did in Ayodhya, the tearing down of what was called the Babri Mosque, and then the annihilation of whole groups of Muslims in that area, in that territory,
which state was
all
it,
done on his watch. Gujarat.
Right.
So this was all on his watch when he was chief minister there. So this is a character who had that capacity before him. He's not the only one, though. If it wasn't him, it would be somebody else. This is the way the world has gone, not just India has gone. If you look at Pakistan, neighboring Pakistan, Imran Khan is a larger-than-life personality and character who's controlling that country. Now, the difference is with many of the countries who aren't these superpowers is that they still have a lot of checks and balances in place, and there's still a lot more nuance. And India, to a certain extent, still has a lot of other characters and a lot of other personalities in play. The point I'm trying to make there is that what has been shown by the repealing of the laws is Modi is really the one who's making the decisions himself sometimes. Yeah, he's making the call. When he decides, no, okay, let's pull it. He wouldn't have said it like that. That's why I'm not a prime minister, and he is. But he would have been churning that out for months about what shall I do and when shall I do it. And this was the moment where he's like, I can't go any further. I've got to call it now.
You played chicken for so long, and then it came a point, like you said, where we have to control the narrative, which is squash this now before somebody else has used the narrative. And it was Gurpur, wasn't it? It was Gurnath Dev Ji's...
I was going to say, on the day he did it, do you think he did it symbolically on that day to coincide?
Why do you guys think, because this is interesting for me.
There's no writing that day.
Here's what's interesting for me to know from you guys. Why do you think he chose that day? I'm not putting you on the spot. Genuinely, what do you think?
Automatically, I thought it's because of that, to build up some leverage, saying, "Oh, isn't he nice? Look at what he did." Then in the media, they could publish it on what a great way to mark this year of Gurpurb for Sikhs. Look at how he's done this on this day. Like, it gives him a bigger positive spin on it compared to what it would have been. It gives him a chance to take away from the main story, and then he gets to be painted as like a nice guy.
Would that be what you think a lot of Sikhs in the West would be assuming is the reasoning?
No, I think a lot of Sikhs see through it. But the broader media...
No. He's not saying why it was done. How does it look? I was asking, how do most people perceive it to be? I think that would be the narrative. Exactly that.
That would be, yeah?
Yeah, it would be the narrative, yeah.
I see what you're saying, Indy. Like Dr. Jazz just said, you've gone to the furthest bit, though. Like most people are seeing through that. But most people are perceiving that's the reason he chose that date. I don't think that's the reason he chose that date.
Okay.
So I think he chose that date because this is a real complex issue, the farmers one. And that's what I said when I came here last time. This is not a cut. This is not.
You can't pinpoint to one event. There's so much history behind it that leads you to this cause.
There's so much going on, and even with the farmers' protests, there was so much going on, and people have started to learn that because over the year, people started realizing, there's more than 24 farmers unions. Why is that, right? And you started realizing they all had different affiliations. So I think, and I'm not alone in this, in the sense I haven't come up with this myself. I've heard it from other analysts and started thinking, I think that's what's going on. I think that Modi chose Guru Nanak's Gurpurb for the reason of sending out a message as to whom he was repealing this law for, and to whom he was sending a message to say, well, look, I'm here for you to now speak to me if this is what we have to do. I'm open to negotiations. And I think that was openly sent to the Sikh community. I think that's the way I see it. I don't see this as an olive branch. He's much more shrewd than that. It's not meant to be an olive branch, but it's meant to be, you the guys who've caused this problem. So here you go. You get it. I'll repeal the laws. But, this isn't it. This isn't the end. Doesn't mean I'm going to reenact the laws, but, at some way we are going to continue moving along down this line in this direction. This won't be the end of it. But here's the open door for the Sikhs of Punjab to now speak with me and tell me what it is you want. Because in the way that you have been a thorn in the side of every major power that takes control of Delhi for the last 70 years, I will not allow the direction and the channeling of this country's future, the way that I'm taking it, the blueprint that I've developed. I'm not going to allow that to be stopped by you troublesome people over there. And I can see you are going to continue to cause me these issues. So bring it on. Let's see what you want, and let's see if we can have that negotiation. I think that whole thing was orchestrated for that day.
Harvey, history always screws over Sikhs. Like you've done an extensive course on this. We always end up worse off after every big turning point of some kind, even though this isn't a big turning point. It's a potential turning point that could go in a good direction if you negotiate shrewdly and properly. But Sikhs don't learn from it. And they always have this problem where they're more than willing to fight for it, but when they get the cause that they need to obviously get right, they always somehow get it wrong. And then we always get suppressed, and then we come out worse from it.
So the question is, so the door's open. So who is our representation to sit down with Modi? That's my question, number one.
There is that as well, which is obviously a complicated issue.
Are you going to be on that panel? They should bring in special advisor from UK, not Diwani. We'll be speaking on the issue. Second thing is, I don't know this stat, but perhaps you do. As a rough estimate percentage, obviously when the movement started, we said, it's not about Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, it's about farmers, right? Of the farmers that are protesting or have been affected, what percentage are Sikh? Or Sikh?
Okay, let's take the second question first. Yep. The overwhelming majority of protesters were no longer Sikh. There was such a huge number of non-Sikh who were coming from places like Uttar Pradesh. They weren't all coming to the single border, but they were all protesting in their own states or coming towards Delhi from the south and all these other places. So I don't think it's necessarily a figures number of the most number. But as a whole over the year, it's the Punjabi Sikh who have done the most amount of protesting.
Raising awareness. Yeah, okay.
The most amount of protesting over the year, and who, as you said, raising awareness, the ones who've instigated the whole thing, who developed the spirit of Asita Ranaya, we're not going anywhere, we're sitting here. That whole idea, that notion was instigated entirely by the Sikh of Punjab. Now, I'm choosing my words carefully as well. I'm saying the Sikh of Punjab, there's Sikh in Haryana, there's Sikh in Delhi, Sikh in Uttar Pradesh. They're part of this too, but I'm saying it's the Sikhs of Punjab who are the troublesome ones. They're the ones that the state is going after. They're the ones who are the ones they're going after. And they are the ones who are the politically minded in that sense. The other people, the other Sikhs, it's not like, they lack anything. They're not a watered down version. But what they are is they are in a very different political landscape. All of this centers around Punjab, that landscape. And so when you're in that landscape where you have a two-party system, only a third party entered into it in the last 10 years and then was not able to progress further because of their own political intrigue that's taking place, still going on now. As a result, you're kind of stuck. Right. And so there's just this complete frustration with not only the process, the system, your lot in life, But with now the only thing we had left, which wasn't making money anyway, but even that's being taken away, the impetus had to come from those people. And so hence they're the group that is still overwhelmingly the most significant as part of this protest. So I don't have exact numbers, but I know from the numbers that I've read in the past and even last week, overwhelmingly, it was no longer Sikhs of Punjab. Whereas 6 months ago, it was overwhelmingly Sikhs of Punjab who were the number one group in terms of numbers that were there. And that's when Uttar Pradesh started coming in, when a particular union got involved at a very high level and refused to back down. And, that was in the spring. And as a result, loads of people from UP started coming out more and more. And it grew and grew and grew. So I think that's your second question answered. The first one is easily the more interesting one. And even when I was thinking about today, like coming on this podcast for the week before, and I was like, I really hope they don't ask me this question. I kid you not. I didn't think too much about today's podcast other than because I've been thinking about it, writing about it for a while anyway. Yeah. But about the subject matter, but I didn't want to think too much about the podcast. But that was the one question I hoped you wouldn't ask. And there's a reason for that. And it's because I'm not going to give you the answer outright. People who understand Punjabi politics like deeply, who might watch this and have an interest level, will know immediately when I say that, in my opinion, there's only one person and one group. It might not be that one person who goes and has the tete-a-tete, but it'll be his envoys, his ambassadors who go have that conversation. But I think for me, so it's very personal, for me, there's only one group, one person who can have that conversation. Now, for specific reasons, I'm not going to say who that is, but the more you get into Punjabi politics or you look at the space, the field right now, you'll know exactly who that is. It's not any of the prominent leaders that most of us know about and the names you might be thinking of. We have like a two-class system in Punjab. We use the words Punjabi and Sikh synonymously. We're all guilty of doing that a lot. Yeah. And it doesn't help us all the time. And this is one of those occasions where it hinders us a lot. But there's a reason people do it. And it's because Punjabi politics is dominated by Sikh politics and Sikh organization, Sikh group politics. The Sikh leadership that we have is all focused almost entirely on Punjab's politics. They're focused on elections, on retaining their seats, on trade and commerce, believe it or not, whatever there is in Punjab, they're focused entirely on that. And whilst they have had some level of input or say-so or interest level or whatever you want to call it with the protests, they've had to, they've kind of been forced into it. Because they don't want to go have that takra with Delhi. They would much rather have avoided it. It's what generally you'll find people will have been saying, like in langar halls around the country or just sitting around, a manja in Punjab. And even like on Twitter and social media, I've seen it occasionally when I've looked. But people say, Chodar di pokhya. They just want to look after their seat. And, that's probably a bit too simplistic. But at the end of the day, it's actually at the heart of the matter. Most of Punjab Sikh leadership, they look at Punjab politics and they worry just to stay in Punjab politics. When it comes to looking at the nation as a whole, and that doesn't just mean India, but it means its foreign affairs, i.e. how it approaches its communications with Pakistan and how it deals with neighboring territories that it sees as foes like China, then and the whole mess that's going on in the Indian Ocean and the battleground there. When it comes to that, there's very few Sikh leadership that's actually interested. Right. And there's very little Sikh leadership that wants to get involved. There is one group that I look up to and I try to listen to all the time. And one particular individual who is the leader, if you like, although he's not the de facto leader, that group is the one that I think should be the one that would go forward and have these conversations. They have the capacity. They have the knowledge, they have the ability. Where they're even going to fall down is it's, by the way, it might sound weird like he's saying all this stuff, but he's not saying who it is. If I tell you the name, it makes very little difference. You're not going to go out and work it out anyway, or if you work it out, if you work it out yourselves, it's not going to make a big difference. You're going to be like, okay, because what I'm talking about, the principle is more important. What Indy said just a few minutes ago, I'm glad you remember all that stuff, Indy, from the course. Like history repeats itself. You did it like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
history
but also,
repeats itself.
Just as a side note, I finally got around to reading that book you gave me, 1984 by, what's her name?
Ganesha.
Yeah, her. Yeah. I'm reading it and it's an incredibly hard read. And each time I read it, it makes me angry. I get visibly upset. And I have to put it down and I have to let it sit and then I can come back to it. It's only 100 pages and it's taken me a while to get through. But in that, it's essentially shown me all the mistakes that have happened after the event of 1984 and how every time there was a movement put forward, it got shut down continually, whether it was by international organizations, whether it was by organizations set up within Punjab domestically, everything was shut down. So forgive me for being pessimistic, and I'm sure people are thinking, why is it so pessimistic? When you read that and you see the level of depth that people go to stop a movement, you can't help but think the same thing's going to happen again. And Sikhs aren't going to get they're not going to be able to get it right because there might be too much emotion behind this cause, or there might be too much history there to make the right call for the future. Well,
where you bring about change is learning from history. And it's right. It's completely appreciative. I completely understand you being pessimistic about it, but the way that change will come will when more people read things like that and start realizing, well, maybe we should learn from this now. The main learning, I mean, the depths of learning and the different strands are numerous, but the main learning you get out of that is never ever close any doors, and make sure that you stay in your lanes. If your lane is this, stay in that one. And the biggest problem we have as a Qawm is that we step on each other's toes more than anybody else steps on our toes. Everyone, if this group is going this way to do this, then everyone here gets annoyed and shuts them down immediately.
We want to be the person doing this, or
right. Or they don't say that necessarily publicly. Obviously, they don't. But what they'll say is something like, "No, we shouldn't even be doing that. That shouldn't even be allowed. That's selling out." And there's numerous roles to play in nation building and in the concept of expressing your sovereignty. There's, a group that's going to be militant, there's going to be violent. We had that in our recent history. We still arguably have it to a certain extent. There's going to be a group. So there's that group, I use the word violent specifically. That's not a thought out process because there's another strand that is, which is the armed struggle. So the violent one is the reactionary bit, but then there's an armed arm of the struggle, an armed branding that happens through something being organized, something being planned, thought out, strategic. And we've had both of those in our recent history. And then you're going to have a side that's going to be the political class. These are people who are actually out there and who are performing, who are essentially, that's that. They're performing that duty. But then you have a group that is the thinking man's group. And pardon me for saying thinking man, obviously it can be female too, but the thinking man's group is essentially the think tank, the ideologues, the ones who appreciate all the different strands and start, seeing they're all there and working out, well, if we do this, this will happen. If that happens, this happens. How does this sit philosophically? And then you're going to have another group that's going to be the executors of all of this. Believe it or not, it's not the politicians who should ever go and speak to the powers that be in Delhi, whether it's Modi or whether it's the civil servants or whether it's his internal council or it's the cabinet. It should always be a group of executive, I call them executive, but they're people who appreciate and understand how to get what you want, how to negotiate, how to speak. And those people will know, "Aa gal karni hai, te uni more aa jawab ditta, aa hun gal nahi karni, te aa gal more karni hai."
They know on the algorithm. Yeah.
So essentially, don't talk about this, talk about that first. That's more important. And then comes that later on if you need to.
Right.
And willing to concede on this and this and this.
And be really there in the moment to be able to be quick enough to make decisions. Politicians aren't always capable of doing that. That's why civil servants do most of that work. Now, that executive group I'm talking about are civil servants. But because we're a nation without a state, we don't have civil servants. So that group would be an executive group. It would be a group that would go and execute on the plan that the thinkers have developed. that has only come about because the armed group, which you could argue at one level, the single border, all those Sikhs sitting there, is a form of armed struggle because they are literally, dominating that space and taking over it. And although they're doing it for their rights and it's a form of protest, it is intimidatory to the state. They don't want them sitting there like that. So you've suddenly got all of these bits, all these pieces on the chessboard playing their part. Now, the bit where we might fall down, and you're right, like I said, Indy, to be pessimistic, where we'll probably fall down is that executive group won't emerge. Now, the executive group doesn't have to just be speaking to Delhi. It could be doing something else. We don't have to just speak to Delhi, but without a shadow of a doubt, because of the way in which Modi repealed these laws, in my opinion, and it is just my opinion, but in my opinion, it was a clear message that if you Sikhs want to speak, let's go at it. And it's not him, I'm stressing this again, it's not him putting out an olive branch. It's not an olive branch, it's a challenge. Go on, I'm ready to talk. Not ready to listen, ready to talk. Difference. And yes, now Sikh have had this opportunity. You can count on one hand in the last 40 years. How many times they've had this opportunity
to come and sit at the table,
and we can't let it go because that opportunity is always there. Arguably, some people would argue Indian nation state. People pro Indian nation state would argue that's always there on the table. Yeah, it is, but it's a facade. This is the first time where you get the person who's making all the decisions, calling all the shots, who's bigger than the government itself,
has been forced,
who's symbolizing by picking Guru Nanak's Gurpurab. I'm talking to you people who've caused this problem. Now, if you listen to Modi's speech on that day, I don't know if you've listened to the whole of Modi's speech. No, I urge everyone to go and listen to it because I argue that his apology is not an apology. It's a halfway apology by way of when he makes the statement that some farmers were with us. We weren't, and then he goes on to say, we weren't able to explain it to all farmers. That is not an apology. That takes away from any of the rest of the part of his statement that is an apology. Because it's saying, now
some
you do that with Guru Nanak.
Why the fuck don't you get it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, he's pointing at Sikhs then, is the point.
That's the point. He's pointing at them. These groups got it. Even the groups who came out to protest by the end, they weren't protesting in the first place, were they? From last October, this was going on. Actually, it started last June in 2020. And it progressed to October by the point when they started the protest and the sit-in, if you like, at the borders of Delhi. And then that's continued to today. That's all instigated by Sikh. And even if it's not Sikhs in number, right? Half the janta there, my cousins who were there on and off, go back, do your kitty buddy, then go back and blah, blah, blah. That, all this, they're sharab peene wale, daru peene wale, don't really do much nitne, maybe a little bit here or there. But they still classed as Sikh because that's what they affiliate to. So I count them as Sikh, even if some people don't. But what those people was they were completely driven by Sikh spirit. And that's a real big if there's a win in this whole movement, it was that once again we saw that Sikh spirit is not dead. For all the people who said Punjab was finished, Punjab people, I've been saying this for years. Hopefully Indy will remember this and back me up.
You say that.
Punjab is never dead. All the people who think that the people in Punjab, the West has got more Sikhi now. Look at us, blah, blah, blah. I tell you what, if you asked us to go protest on a border in the freezing cold.
How long would we last, man?
Mate, we wouldn't last.
Christmas
These guys are built different. The DNA in Punjab. Professor Puran Singh, famous Sikh literary scholar, had this statement where he says, Punjab just sai lena Sikhi hai.
What does that mean?
Just walk to breathe. Just to breathe in Punjab makes you is Sikhi. That's practicing Sikhi because it's the place where karke uh dharti hai jithe Guru Sahib ne hal baya si. Guru Sahib ne hal baya si utthe. Guru Nanak, plows the field there. Even touching the mitti, walking on the mitti of Punjab is pittar for a Sikh, from a Sikh point of view. So the people in Punjab have a different DNA. It's not built up by the environment in the sense that they have a hard life, so they're like that. I'm sure that's a small part of it, but it's because of that Sikh spirit. They still have Sikh spirit.
Resilience, basically.
Yeah, we don't have that. Our Sikh spirit is watered down. We probably have it a little bit, but that bit that's, the longevity, you only get that when you're born there, live there, never left there. maybe went out for 3 months, got a visa to come in, earn some money, and then go back. But beyond that, you have nothing other than that as in your head. Reference. They don't go on holidays. The three of us sitting here have been on, a dozen holidays in our life.
Yeah.
Where do we go? We go because Mandu Shanti Chaidiya. They don't go on holidays. How do they get through it? They made up differently. On the spirit Sikhi. So that spirit of Sikhi is what kept this protest there throughout. That's why these people were there. That's what they were doing the whole time. And I think it was a clear message for me anyway, like I said, from the Sarkar, that this was a moment where they're saying, we recognize you're the problem. We recognize the elections are coming up. But the BJP has never been that successful in Punjab at all, at any level, which is why they always side up with the Shiromani Akali Dal, the Sikh premier political party. And they would then, co-rule. Only because of their joint leadership with the Shiromani Akali Dal were they able to do that. Now here they saw a moment where, because the Akalis have split with them, not going to have a co-habitation, co-run of the election.
Is that because of all this?
Yeah, it was inevitable anyway, I think. It was going to happen at some point. This is going to be the excuse that's used for it. But the parting of the ways between the BJP and the Shiromani Akali Dal was happening over the course of the last 3 years. And it's got very little to do with the personality of they don't actually get on. But it's because of the way Modi is taking the country and the direction he's channeling it in. What he sees as being the future vision does not, believe it or not, does not match that of Prakash Badal's. So you've got another cartel where it was always going to be very difficult for them to be, in bed together. But this was the excuse that gave them to make that split. So they weren't going to be able to sit together in the election campaigning and then going forward for the election. But for Modi, what it meant was that he was going to have this problem nationwide. In the biggest election that everyone's going to be looking at come next year is the Uttar Pradesh election. So UP's election lasts 4 months. It's the biggest out of all of the states. That's where you got the biggest electorate. And to get their votes together, to count those votes, to pool it all together, it takes 4 months.
Jesus Christ, America does it in one night, and these guys do it in 4 months.
Well, think about the facilities you're talking about doing this in. The kind of infrastructure you've got is different as well. But there's more reasoning than that. But just let's stick with that for now. But Punjab is going to be done in 4 weeks. Once they start taking votes, and then once they get to announcing, it's around about 4 to 5 weeks, I think it is. So it's going to start around late Feb. By the end of March, we'll know. And that's the way it was at the last election and the one before that.
So essentially, do you think the UP is going to be a massive swing state? Where it could go in the BJP favour or it could go massively against it?
I don't think that's as big a problem for them as they could get a complete trouncing in some of these places. That's the problem. It's the vote share that they're going to see come back. If the vote share comes back as, being annihilated, that's something that even the best spin doctor couldn't get you out of. Dominic Cummings himself wouldn't be able to help them out in that situation.
Yeah.
And that does not fit. I mean, I'm coming back to it again. That does not fit the Modi blueprint for the direction that the state is being taken in. He can't have that setback. So all eyes are going to be on Uttar Pradesh, but already we've seen just in the last 2 weeks, well, since the announcement of repealing the laws, you're seeing them gear up for trying to prevent as much of that vote bank diminishing as possible. That's what we're seeing.
How do you do that?
Well, one of the ways you do that is in Punjab, for example, you take the former chief minister. He was chief minister until 2 months ago, and you get him to sign up to your party, and that's Captain Amarinder Singh. And Captain Amarinder Singh, when he got kicked out by the Congress, he's no longer chief minister, and Chandy came in. For whatever reason that happened, we won't go into. But when he leaves Congress, and he's toying with the idea of BJP, that in itself, him just even toying with the idea is a big deal. From a electorate point of view. Yeah, optics, that's the word. That's it. That's what it's all about. It's about the perception and how people are going to view this. Now, whether or not that actually gets anywhere, who cares? They've already started the movement towards we're still a serious player. Now, in the last week, everyone probably in the West knows about Sidhu Moosewala, but the one that most people haven't really concentrated on, or certainly younger people haven't, is a man by the name of Manjinder Sirsa. And Sirsa was a Shiromani Akali Dal party member in Delhi, card-carrying member, and he, defected and is now part of the BJP. But what's been missed in his part of the conversation, which is important, is that the only reason he had a seat in Delhi was because of the BJP. He had actually been put on a BJP ticket, and that was because of that collaboration, that partnership between the BJP and the Shiromani Akali Dal.
Right.
So Sirsa joining the BJP shouldn't be a big deal when he was on their frigging ticket for the last, for the last term anyway, right? But standard, like we say, Punjabi stroke Sikhs don't think like that. we need to think about this stuff with a little bit more depth and have a little bit more conversation. Even me saying that is too simplistic. Obviously, it is a jump for him to come that way. But again, he's being lambasted for it entirely. But I think that's political naivety. We're showing our political naivety by saying this guy has done that. Look at the way he was treated. We're not going to go too much into the detail. I won't bore you with it because it is a little bit boring from that side.
No, I enjoyed this.
Okay, well, he was the head of the Delhi. I'm going to go into it then. He was head of Delhi Shiromani Gurdwara Management Committee, right? The DGMC. And as part of that, they had their election for that body, which manages all the Delhi Gurdwara of historic importance. They had their organization's elections like 1 month ago, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago now. And he lost his seat in that election, right? Now, that's down to a lot of the Delhi politics that goes on within the Sikh community and that management group. But at the same time, a few things happened at the exact same time. He was shown to not have any sense of good or deep knowledge about Sikhi. And a test you have to do where you have to write in Punjabi a whole bunch of tukan from the Guru Granth Sahib. You have to answer questions like that. Right. He absolutely flopped. And his test paper was leaked, right? Imagine if that happened. Look, I'm a whole generation before you guys, but if that happened to me when I was at university, as an era before social media, I would have died. You lot of the social media generation, what would it have been like if someone had leaked your test papers?
Imagine seeing that again and again and again.
I did really well. I wouldn't have minded.
There you go. Okay. You wouldn't have minded. That's why you're the doctor. But me and Indy would have been like, no,
I'm good.
Even if we did well, you don't want to see people like judging your essays, right? And things that you're writing. Where his was really bad, though. It was really bad. I'm better than him, basically. My Punjabi is more fluent than his, and I can rewrite a line of Gurbani with maybe. We actually did the test. Me and my friend did the test that he did, and I got about 3 mistakes where he had over 24.
Wow!
And he had more than that he had more than that on the totality. But this was where you had to rewrite a passage of the Guru Granth Sahib Shabad. And I only had sometimes the silent Herein will throw you, silent Onkar throws you, but generally you shouldn't get it wrong. He was getting the basic stuff wrong, let alone the silent sounds.
Completely missed words.
Completely messing up. Like his education level is not up to par for someone who should be in that position.
Right, got it. Okay.
But the problem is, the thing is that what we've got to appreciate is that's not how Punjab and Sikh politics works. At the moment, it's the Wild West. And so the people who are in these positions, it's not about getting the best person for the position. It's about getting the best speaker and best doer and best organizer and rallier and that cartel I'm talking about. It is literally like a mafia. And so, you've got to have the players in the cartel to keep your cartel moving. And he was one of those. Now, where that whole thing happened about him, he was getting lambasted left, right, and center in Punjabi speaking circles. But then in Sikh political circles, which isn't a big group, but people who really keep up with every little happening, people like myself, Norjawan's site, we write about that stuff literally every week. Like we were all, everyone was laughing at him. I mean, we weren't laughing, but even we were like, this is ridiculous. Like, how could he be so bad? So when you say that about a guy like that, then why can you then, what right does that then give us as a community to complain when he jumped ship to another political party. You're saying he's not jog for yourselves. I'd in fact, this is what I'm saying, we're very politically naive. I'd jump on it and say, brilliant, we've now got an intelligence agent working in their political party. That's how I genuinely...
People are going to see it that way. People are going to see it like
Harvey saying you could see it that way. Yeah, that's point, isn't it?
You can't have it. Yeah, go on. Sorry, you say it, Dr. Andy.
Within his bed scene, now we're complaining that he's gone to a different party. You can see it the way you're seeing it, and a lot of people won't, but that's exactly Harvey's point about the naivety. Whereas if you look at it the other way, you're right. You could look at it the other way, and that would be a good thing to have.
I think we need to, as a group, I mean, this whole strand that I'm taking the conversation down was because Indy had said, how are we going to stop ourselves making those mistakes again and repeating them at this juncture in history as it's going to come to be known? And that is by all of us taking this moment, this opportunity, all those Twitter spaces, all these podcasts, all the YouTube video conversations about it from people in the West. So I'm only speaking now to the people whose first language is English. Punjab people do what they will. Punjabi speaking people do what they will. But we, this group, everyone under the age of 50 who speaks their first language is English, offspring of migrants, we have an opportunity where we can flip that past way of working. And we can say, no, we're going to change it up this time. And then I'll bring it on to Sidhu Moosewala without going too in deep in it, unless you guys want to on that as well.
Yeah,
but that's a great example of it.
Why has he got into Indian politics all of a sudden? I mean, successful singer. It's not really the next thing that you think that he would go into afterwards.
That's, go on. Go on,
Karan.
I often think when people do have a following for whatever reason, it's a natural thing, man. It's like even when we were talking about our podcast, we were talking about that consultant a couple of weeks ago. Once you have a following and audience, you can use that to channel whatever it is. So I think I think it'd be it's a natural move. He's got a following. He's got people behind you, right? He's very successful. And if he didn't go into films, that's it. He's going to go into politics, man. The rest of them all go into films.
That's it. I think that's it in a nutshell. The thing is, I'm a little confused on this, maybe because of my age and generation and not being interested in this music as much. But I didn't realize his music career was coming towards an end. I thought he was at the peak.
I didn't know that.
Well, the way you two are speaking, what's he going to do next?
Yeah.
No. I was thinking, if you're doing music, eventually, either you grow as a musician and you go into other genres and you try other things, or you step out and do something like how he's done now. So I was thinking, all of his music's out again and again. He's done collaborations with UK artists. He's been on songs in the UK. He's tried to build up himself in other genre spaces. That's cool. Next is probably movies or films. Films or politics. And now you're sitting here thinking, all right, why go into Indian politics? Because notoriously corrupt. Does this mean you're going to stop doing music? What does it mean for the future?
Let me just finish the analogy where I went on from Sirsa to Moosewala, and then we'll go on the question. So the reason why I even just said with him, we've got to think a little bit deeper on the way we're talking about these characters and these personalities, these individuals, and when they're doing this. At the moment, everything is binary. And that's not just a Sikh Punjabi thing. That's the whole world has become binary. You're the left or you're right. You got to go all in or not. You either Black Lives Matter or you're not. You know what I mean? You're an ally. You're an ally or you're a part of the problem. It's like, come on, man. There's so much in between that area.
You're not allowed to be afforded the luxury of being center. You can't. Right. It's either there or there, and it's silly.
That's it.
Yeah.
So where I brought Moosewala in was that we're seeing the same thing with him as with Sirsa, except our generations, everyone who's born and raised in the West in particular, we obviously know more about Moosewala than we do about Sirsa.
Yeah.
And some of the people watching this back later may never have even heard of Sirsa or know who he is or what the hell that's about. But the Moosewala is the same issue, which is that we've got to think a little bit more and have a little bit more nuance about what it is. Now, by the way, I don't for a second think that Manjinder Sirsa has gone into the BJP as an intelligence agent. I'm saying that's the way you can spin it. And we could choose to think of it that way, because if this guy was an incompetent for the Shromani Akali Dal, the DSGMC, then he'll be an incompetent for them.
Exactly.
Let him go. I'd say, right? That's what I'd be thinking. But no, we get so butthurt that someone has done this thing. And really, it speaks a lot for our community in the way they are. And we see that with Moosewala. We became we're still suffering. I prefer not to say these kind of words, but I'm going to have to say them. we are still as a community, particularly the West ones, the West impact, and Punjab not so much. We are suffering a lot of trauma from not only the events after 1984, not only the events of 1984, and then not only the events leading up to 1984, but the mass migration we had to we endured to come to these territories. And for those people who didn't migrate themselves, but the offspring of migrants, what that trauma is growing up, dealing with, even if you didn't ever face, much racism or stuff like that, what you had to deal with is this question of who the hell am I in this group of people? Whether it's America, Canada, Germany, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, or England, you had to at some point say, how do I fit in this? How do I retain my culture and my belief system in and amongst this? And that can be a traumatic episode when you don't have the tools to deal with it and you don't know how to deal with it. I'd argue that the earlier generations had it easier because they still had some of the tools to deal with it, which a lot of Punjab people have to deal with it, which is, it's a very simplistic thing to say to some people, but it's not when you get into it, which is Gurbani and the Ardas. If you do an Ardas every day, the Ardas puts into perspective your entire life. Because in the Ardas, you're remembering people who were cut up bit by bit, who were put on these charkriyan and shaheed in the most hideous way. You're remembering that Nankana Sahib is no longer in our control, but we demand it. Like, it helps you deal with the trauma and put into place, look, mate, if the worst I have to do is speak another language as my first language, and good. This is secondary, I'm still doing pretty good. I've now got to devote myself some way, work harder to keep those roots and have that belief system, but I can find my place, right? If you don't have that toolkit, or if no one ever told you that even about the Ardas, then it's difficult to deal with. And I think that's what makes us so, we feel traumatized when someone goes out from us, when they leave us, right? They've left us. They've sinned by ditching us. And by ditching us, really it's a feeling of like, well, I could have left too and I didn't. I'm still putting up with being this. Why are you not putting up with it, right? And I think that's the Moosewala. I think anyone who goes over to Congress in this country, particularly if you start voting Tory, you're looked at a certain way. That isn't helpful, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's without merit. I'm saying, making that argument. What I'm saying is it's not helpful. Because if an individual decides to do something in their life and it's their political affiliation and blah, 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 you're supposed to have discourse and debate over it, which is what's going to help you evolve and grow and come to a community's convergence. You're not going to all now, we're all going to see the same light, but your convergence will be like this, but you'll recognize there's a direction. Let's make sure we're all headed in the same direction. Might not be the same target at the end.
Or the how, the execution.
Yeah, the direction's the same. And we don't even allow ourselves to do that. So Moosewala became, in that sense, has now become the poster boy for that. And I think it's absolutely wonderful that he's entered into the world of politics, because literally a few million people in the West who otherwise had no interest in Punjab politics have now suddenly perked up and learned that there's an election going on next year. And that they've learned a little bit more about politics, even if it was just to say, oh, he joined Congress, we should not allow that. And then at some point in their head said, well, why can't he go join the Congress? Oh, yeah, they're the people who invaded Darbar Sahib. Okay, I'm sure there's some kids out there, maybe they're brave enough to even say it on Instagram or Twitter, but who probably thought to themselves, well, that was 40 years ago. Are we going to continue to blame that political party? Now, believe it or not, that's actually the right question to have. The answer will differ from person to person. My answer to that would be yes, but not because of 84, but because of what the Indian National Congress Party stands for. Immediately, though, what I would juxtapose that with is, who the hell should he have gone and stood for? Which political party would we have been happy with him joining? Because if he joined Shiromani Akali Dal, immediately everyone would have said, look, he's Badal da chamcha jaake beh gaya, right?
Oh, right, okay.
And then the next question becomes, well, he could have stood for another political party. Which one?
So who's he going to stand for, just for people that don't understand what he's actually done? He has joined the Indian National Congress Party, which is a party that goes right to the roots of the Indian nation state being born a century ago. And he's basically joined them on a ticket where he's going to be given a seat
to campaign for at the election in the as an MLA, so the Legislative Assembly in Punjab at a regional level. And what some people didn't realize, but it's come out quite widely now. I think probably everyone's aware of it by now. But his mother is a Congress Party member and actually in the panchayat in her pen. So she's very she's well into politics and she's in the Congress Party.
Right.
So immediately, if he's made the decision to go become political, whatever's behind that, which we can touch on in a minute, but whatever's behind that, his doors were immediately closed to anything other than Congress, because who's going to go against what their mother's in and their parents in, their father's in. Then the second part becomes, well, if he decided, I want to make a change, which is what he's come out and said in an Instagram live, I want to see change happen. I want to make change. This is how you do it. Some people argued back with him, even on the live I saw, that where you could have made change by standing as an independent candidate. You didn't have to join a political party. You could have stood as an
money
independent.
Behind you. You don't have any funding.
So this is the interesting thing. He's not short of a bubble too.
Yeah. But how much impact are you going to have?
But that's not how independents actually make things work in Hindustan. That's not how the electorate votes. Now, you can stand as an independent and you could argue that he's so famous and he's got such a following, he would win and still do something. But I guarantee you, as an independent, the level of change he would bring about would be either minuscule or immeasurable. It would not be able to be, you wouldn't even be able to measure it. In fact, I would argue, though, by standing in any political party, he's got to be there for at least 2 terms, if not 3, in order to actually start making change.
Yeah, get ingrained. But it's better being in the problem or in the system, infiltrating it, and then coming within, rather than, like you're saying, just standing.
Well, that's the whole debate, right? Like, I have some level, I have a keen interest in politics, but I have some level of wanting to create change. But I've never gone and looked for political office. And I've said quite a few times in the past publicly that I've never been interested in politics here in the UK, because my interest that wanting to hold political office would only ever be in the Punjab.
Yeah.
And so, I even have some aspirations for that. I don't think they're ever going to happen. I'm too far removed from it for that. But if I did have those aspirations, they did exist in Punjab. But mine would be at a very low level. Enter into your Pend's Panchayat, get up to the level of where you could finally, ultimately, as a person in their 60s, become the Sarpanch and actually try to effect some change. There have been some good DCs and Sarpanches in Punjab in the last 30 years. It's not like it's a complete carte blanche of idiots. There have been some very good ones. The DC in my ilaka was about 20 years ago, was a man called Kishan Kumar, and he was phenomenal. This banda was brilliant. He completely revolutionized things at a local level, and he rooted out a lot of corruption that existed in Nawashahar and that area. And, people loved him for it. So it is possible, and you can do that. At a Sarpanch level, you can start changing things that happen in the bends that are under your control. And you can start enforcing things to, bring about a level of prosperity. So you can bring about change. I think he's jumped too deep in, but with his level of profile, it's easy for me to say go in at the lower level. But, with his level of profile,
accelerated program.
Bears a make a splash.
Exactly. So the whole Moosewala thing has so much going on behind it. There were legal cases against him. Use of a firearm or possession of a firearm was one of the cases. I think that all has something to do with it. And then the other obvious one is money. You have to spend money to get these tickets and get these seats. Yeah. I think his would have been heavily discounted by the Congress, because he brings more to the table than your average candidate trying to get a seat and buy a ticket.
So he brings the eyes, they bring the money.
But he will now be earning money. He will be earning next level money. So why is it people who have nous, who have money, who have access, go into politics in Punjab? Is because you're now going to earn money on a level, on a scale that you didn't before. So many politicians, I can't give you numbers, and I'm not going to say all of them, because there'll probably be some who don't. But, so many of the senior politicians, i.e. people who are elected to office at state level and obviously at national level, but in the Punjab, they all have hotels, and they all own restaurants, they all own businesses. as well as the kickbacks they get for buildings and developments and mining that goes on and stuff like that. Now, how do they get how come one parliamentarian that I know of, how does he own 3 malls in Ludhiana? How is that possible? Well, because when the license was being given for the ground to be broken and for that building to be erected there, he was the person who was being approached and signing off, and he took over I'm gonna build the mall. He actually owns outright the mall.
Oh right, not even a cut.
So he then bought out the shareholders later on. However he bought them out, I don't want to speculate, but that's how they do that. So that's how they operate. Now this happens at Sikh politics as well, not just in national politics or state politics. There's members of the SGPC, Shiromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee in Punjab, and people who have senior positions in the Akal Takht and in the Darbar Sahib hierarchy themselves, who have businesses on the sides. And some of their businesses aren't just located in Punjab, they're located in the West. Prakash Badal's family is quite Prakash Badal's family is quite well known for this, that they have a number of business interests particularly in the United States. And this kind of thing goes on. So, Moosewala's on track to make some more dough. That's number one. Now, like I said, so that's always got to be a number one, I think, when you're in that position. But then, as you said already, Dr. Jazz. Sorry, I'm going to call you Dr. Jazz if that's all right. It suddenly sounds like I'm on an American talk show, like talking to a psychologist. Dr. Jazz. But like you said, these people do want to bring about some level of change. They want to do that, but it's not the first time that a musician or a playback singer has gone into politics. And there's some who are there right now. Hansraj Hans is still angling for political office. Muhammad Sadiq, one of the most famous Punjabi folk singers of all time, is actually still in office right now, in political office. And most people don't know that he even has a seat, but he does. So, he's not the first singer to try and do it. He's going to be the first one, though, in the modern era who's going to be successful at it, because I think even despite all the blowback, he retains a certain aura for Punjabi electorate. Young people in Punjabi who are going to be his electorate, who are going to still vote for him. They literally idol worship him. So
it's crazy how people will let idolization trump policy. I still think that's quite disturbing to actually think about, because you can have, I think you've pointed this out to me in the past, where there was a Singh who was running for UKIP and everyone's like, let's vote for the Singh. And I was like, but what does he stand for? He stands for UKIP policies. You can't vote for that if you're Sikh. That doesn't work for you. So it's a similar mentality that really frustrates me, because you need to see what they're standing for, not the person themselves.
I'm glad you said that, because actually we don't need to look as far as Punjab to get that understanding. Just look at the UK. Look at the people.
No, you can look at the UK now and you've got the same thing. Yeah.
How many people who are Sikh in this country support Tan Tesi and his being an MP, and we stand behind you, Tan, without ever knowing a single policy that he stands for? And I don't mean as a member of the Labour Party. Generally, most Sikhs will side because he's a Labour Party candidate anyway. But most of them won't know what his specific policy is, for example, in regard to HS2, which is a big deal for his constituents in Slough.
Yeah.
And most Sikhs might not have an opinion on HS2, right? But I did things like that. No one's actually asked to see, well, what is your policy for the local constituents of Slough that you're representing? Ultimately, that's who he's representing. We just back him because he's a Singh and he's a Sardar, he's one of us.
It's true.
There's a raw animalistic kind of tribalism that's taking place here, and we're afraid to say that out loud.
But there's one thing he does do, Harvey, which is he calls out the opposition on a lot of issues that affect his people. So he will push back on all the issues of, say, Islamophobia, racism, all those things that have affected him and Sikhs growing up.
Jaggi Jol, he's spoken about Jaggi Jol, he's spoken about the Punjab farmers.
Yeah, he's spoken about that. And he mentions it frequently. He doesn't just say it once tick box, he'll come back to it. And anytime he gets a chance to talk about it, he raises it. Even in the last week, he brought up the whole fact of tokenism in the Tory government and the new policy that have gone through, which I wanted to bring up today. So there's a new immigration policy that's passed through that essentially allows the government, it's not been passed through yet, it's in motion, but it gives the government the chance to take away any immigrants' British citizenship without notice, without reason. which is frightening because essentially it means that all people who are from immigrant parents can have their citizenship taken away at any moment. So you're a second-class citizen now in the UK. And he's saying you've got a big diverse Tory front bench of, the most diverse cabinet ever who haven't pushed back on this at all, haven't mentioned any of it, which is worrying. So therefore it's tokenism. And to an extent, he's correct because why else have them there then?
But then this is where I'm saying our political naivety has reared itself again. You're right to point out, not only does he talk on all these issues, and I've mentioned a couple he's done, and that's why people say, look, Sadi gal karda, it's good. We've at least got a voice there. But where I'm saying that's politically naive is that I'm not going to win any fans for this, and I don't expect you two to necessarily agree, right? You can murmur and say, yep, that's fine, but I don't want you to agree, in fact. Have your own opinion on it, but that's not his job. He hasn't been elected. He hasn't been elected to speak on behalf of the Sikhs of this country. And I want to put on record again, because I've done this once before, I don't want him speaking on behalf of the Sikhs in this country. I don't. If someone said, well, who should then? I don't know. We should have that conversation, don't you think? Been here long enough now. We should say, who's speaking on our behalf? We should have that conversation separately. It shouldn't be de facto Inderjeet Singh because it shouldn't be Inderjeet Singh because he got appointed as a Lord. It shouldn't be Tan Desi or Preet Gill because they got elected to the House of Commons. It should be something in a different system. But it is what it is. This is what I'm saying. I'd like to see, I'm trying not to sound like I'm being too negative about it. What I'd like to see is turn it on its head and say, why don't we just become a little bit more politically astute? Let's all start talking about these things regularly and say, look, let's just calm down a little bit. If someone talks about these things in Parliament, it doesn't necessarily change things. And I'm glad you nicely segued over to the border and immigration bill that got passed this week, because there's a great point on it. If Tanamanjeet raised that point, or any other parliamentarian, there was one great parliamentarian who raised that this week as well that I saw a clip of. I can't remember his name now, but he spoke with a northern accent. He's a Gora white man speaking on it. And he then said, I'm not going to give way because the opposition was shouting, give way, heed way now. I'm not going to give way because you lot talk rubbish. He goes, you've had your chance to speak rubbish. Now, here's the thing that happens in the House of Commons that's really interesting to note. Even though you speak out and you say something, doesn't mean it's actually going to change the bill and the wording of the bill and the way it goes. It doesn't. You have to be one hell of an orator to get people behind you. And it's more than just being an orator. You've got to have done that work by lobbying in the corridors of
you have to talk to people individually to get them to flip and vote against it. Literally, like in House of Cards.
Yeah,
that's it. Now, here's the question I'm going to throw. Here's the question I'm going to throw back at you both. This week, that bill was passed, as you rightly said, and it's going to massively affect immigrants in particular, but then also offspring of immigrants. And people who are Black and ethnic minority groups are going to suffer the most. How many mainstream news broadcasters and editors and publications did you see cover that this week? That bill was
only
passed?
The Guardian. That's it, because the Christmas party thing happened. That was the leading story. This whole immigration thing was brought up 3 weeks prior, but by the Guardian saying this proposed bill may mean this, and people read it and thought, "Oh, that's nice." That's it. It didn't go anywhere. But now that it's potentially going to be passed, it's going to be passed. It's a problem.
And it's gone into the House of Lords. It's passed its final reading in the Commons. So now it'll get approved by the Lords. Although the Lords, the Lords are usually pretty good, though, at like censoring some of this stuff down, watering it down, sending it back. But I've got to think I can't remember why. I read something on it literally earlier this morning that said that it's probably going to go through in the way that we all thought it would now, the way we've been scared about it for the last 2-3 weeks. But it hasn't just suddenly come out of nowhere in the last 2-3 weeks. It's been hidden this week because of the Christmas party. Now, this is tinfoil hat time, arguably, but it was pretty damn convenient that the Christmas party thing happened at the exact same time as that bill. Now, I'm not saying it happened because of that bill being passed this week and to deflect attention, but I'm saying it was bloody handy that and the Omicron virus all happening at the same time. It was a great week to get that bill through. Is the point I'm making. Push it through. as in without coverage. I mean, it was earmarked to go through this week anyway, so it's not like they stuck it in.
It's very smart how things have gone in this way, and it's logical, and I can see why that works. But the government, every government does this at all levels, whether it's Tory, Labour, any. When it comes to the end of the term or recess, they push a load of bills through, and no one realizes. And sometimes it goes under the radar.
And what you're doing is this week, I mean, the thing is, they could push this through under the radar as much as they want. A newspaper editor or the person the BBC News editor online for online news, the person who's the editor for Radio 4 of the Today programme, the editors of BBC News at 9, all of these people, I'm picking on just the BBC, we can go to ITV, we can go to all of them.
Yeah, you can go to all of them.
For me, the buck falls with them. Why aren't you covering this? They should have been covering it, and they didn't cover it. For me, the concern is covering. This government was always going to do that. You've got Priti Patel, who, barks out this bakwas week after week after week, dog whistling to the right about immigrants coming into this country in dinghies, overspilling. They're coming here because the hotels were seen as a soft touch. They just know they'll get to stay in hotels, blah, 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 which is completely removed from the reality that immigrants face when they come to this country, asylum seekers rather. And if you've got people of brown color skin doing that in the cabinet, then you could expect this government was going to push those kind of bills,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
Sajid Javid, Alok Sharma, these guys are not clean guys at all, at any level, right? So they're going to push this kind of stuff.
Same thing. Came from a very rich family from questionable roots.
He has some he's married into the most questionable stuff. But with him, it's still at the moment, I think, at that level of, well, what has he actually done that might be a bit out there or dodgy and stuff like that, right? So let's say I give him a free pass just for that reason. I mean, I'm sure that it's there. I haven't looked into it much, and he's still a little wet behind the ears, right? But the other ones, Alok Sharma, dear God, Google Alok Sharma and read his Wikipedia page. That's fun, right?
Homework for everyone listening, guys.
No one's ever done that. Like, people, we don't do this as a community. Alok Sharma was given the role of overseeing COP26, perhaps what was billed as being the most important, for the state of the climate change movement, for the state of our future, the future generations, the biggest thing internationally that was going to happen in this year, at a year when COVID's still rife, right? And he was the guy overseeing that. Go read his Wikipedia page and see that dude's history. Because then you suddenly look back at, that video that made him a little bit viral for a day, where he was crying at the end about them having got through this one concession at COP26. I don't know if you saw that, or if any of the viewers saw that. Go check that, because he goes like a lump in his throat.
Yeah.
And then people start applauding, and they stand up and applaud. And then he comes back and he finishes, and he's teary-eyed. Bullshit. I call bullshit. Crocodile tears. Crocodile tears. He knew exactly what he was doing. This Banda's a seasoned veteran politician. He's really good at what he does. And the places they gather money is what you'll read on the Wikipedia pages. Who they're lobbying for. Who he was lobbying for made no sense that this guy got COP26, right? Anyway, I veered off, but these kind of guys were always, these people are the brown faces in the cabinet. They were going to push this. So
do you see how you mean? Go on, sorry.
No, I'm saying the responsibility for me in this whole position was these politicians were going to do this. Where is the newspaper / news media broadcast journalists? Where are those people covering this? And they don't exist anymore. I don't even read the BBC anymore. I still go to it every day just to see the headlines, but I don't read the articles. I now exclusively read about 3 different things, right? I just want to drop them in because I've got to give them a shout out. One is called Byline Times. Every person watching this, if you're UK based, it's a UK centric thing, visit Byline Times. You will read excellent stuff on that website every single day as news media, and you need to show support to them. I'm a funder. I buy their newspaper. It comes out once a month. I watch they've got Byline TV, Byline Times TV. So I'm a subscriber to that. And I watch their YouTube videos that come out for members only and stuff like that. It's brilliant for UK news. But then for UK news, I also read Prospect magazine, which is a brilliant kind of read and gives you ideas on what's going on politically, which is no longer as good as it used to be, but it's still pretty good. It's a once a month read. And then the third one is The Atlantic magazine, which mainly covers a lot of American stuff, North American, but mainly US, but it crosses over to European mix. Now, I get my news from those three sources. And then obviously the big one, Democracy Now!, which I think I hit up, I mentioned, bigged up last time I was speaking to you two. democracynow.org is the place to get your news from. The problem is it's very US centered, and then it becomes about international news. But that's where you should get your news from. I don't even listen to the BBC, and what's the point? See their headlines. When I saw the headlines this week, I actually went into the news section and I searched. On the day the bill passed, I couldn't find
an article.
them putting an article out saying the bill has passed.
But it hasn't passed. It hasn't passed. It's yet to be voted on, isn't it? It's yet to be voted on in the House of Commons.
No, it's gone through the House of Commons. It passed the House of Commons.
Oh, right. Sorry,
it's gone through the Lords
ago. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's right.
It's gone through the Commons and it's now in the Lords. Now, I was like, I can't believe this. Like, what's going on? How is no one covering this, giving it coverage, giving it talk time? And then ultimately that responsibility comes back onto us. We're the people who don't demand more from our journalism. We're the people who don't demand more from our news media. And we should. You should demand more. You should switch them off. Switch them off. Completely.
And to go back to your point
paying your license fee.
And to go back to the point of saying why Tan Minji should not go and do that. He should not be the voice of Sikh politics, or representing Sikh issues or minority issues. I think the opportunity of him doing it, as you said, serves a greater purpose, which is it allows him to make a clip, which then can be posted to social media, which can then get posted to people who aren't minorities, who can then see a bigger picture and think, oh, that's an issue. So it gives you an opportunity to build that kind of relationship up with others and expose them to these issues. So I see why he does it, because again, it's not playing politics, but you have to play the game a little bit to get the voice out there and the issue out there.
On the assumption that that's the reason he's doing it,
do you think that's his
intention?
That's
fine.
I don't think that's the ulterior motive. No. I'm just saying it's one reason amongst a host of other reasons that allows him to do it.
But I'll throw another one there that it would be very hypocritical of me, who said earlier on that stay in your lanes, let these people do this thing, these people do these things. It would be hypocritical of me to now say Tan shouldn't say this. I'm not taking back what I said, but I was trying to be careful. Maybe I wasn't careful enough with my words to say that I don't think Tan should be doing that. He doesn't speak for me and he doesn't speak for Sikhs as a whole. But that doesn't mean he should stop doing it just because I think so. That's the important point there.
Yeah.
And if I thought that, I'd be writing articles, we write in Naujwani's opinion editorial. We've never once written a piece about him saying that, because even though I don't think he should do that, and some of my colleagues who write at the site don't think he should do that, doesn't mean we think he should stop. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
Just because we don't think he should do that, he shouldn't stop. He shouldn't stop because I think he shouldn't do it. If I want to campaign about it, there's a back on gal karni hai ke here's the reasoning why. That's a different issue, but we've never even gone that far. If he ever met me and said, I saw his podcast and you were saying this, that, and the other, I'd say, I don't think you should. I don't think you should. But who the hell am I to tell you to stop? I opinion but I'm not going out, setting out Instagram posts and writing articles to say Tan Mendes shouldn't speak on our behalf. This is in conversation where we make those statements. And, he can make those statements, like you said, going back to that, he can do that. And it does add some awareness, but you know where I'm going to go with that. What in the end, who cares about awareness? What's awareness going to do for us, right?
True,
I think there's some level of it where it's good, but it's rarely been where it actually helps us.
There needs to be action at the end of it, and you don't know how to bridge that gap to get action done. You can sign all the petitions you want, but some of them just get thrown out at the end anyway.
That's it. And that's not how politics works anymore. It never really worked like that. Politics is about lobbying, throwing money in places, and with your feet.
A lot of it now has to just be keeping an eye on the elections and what Sikhs do from here, farmers of Punjab exclusively, what they choose to do from here. And being honest, Harvey, where's the best place to sort of follow this going forward? Because outlets don't cover it. As you mentioned, those independent sources are great. Naujwani, I'm sure you guys cover it as well. Are there any other places that maybe we should recommend in a more digestible format, like podcasts, like audio bites, etc.? I know everyone's got a different way of wanting to listen to content.
Yes, everyone will have their own place that they like consuming this content and what's going on with the news media and the elections coming up. I mean, it's a good segue into this. I said that awareness doesn't necessarily change things. Protests don't always change things, but that's exactly what we talked about in Punjab. And on that note, I don't think that necessarily the protest played a huge part in it. And I wrote an article, that triggered you guys wanting to speak to me again about this, saying that I don't think there was no victory with the farmers' laws being repealed. And when I wrote that, and in the article, if you read it, like, I'm not saying that it's the people on the ground shouldn't celebrate that they have now had what they perceive as a victory. For them, it is a victory. And for them and what they've managed to do over the last year, it is. But generally looking at it overall, and when we come to look back on it in hindsight, as a community worldwide, and we in the West right now should look at it, you shouldn't see something that you didn't ask for, that was hoisted on you, that has now taken all of your resources and energy for over a year, and all of that time, and people's lives have been lost as a result of it. You can't see it taking you back to the place you were before that was hoisted on you as a victory. In fact, you're not at the place you were before it, because you have now expended a huge amount of resource, money, time, the whole thing. And so that's why it's not still a victory. And it whilst on the face of it, protests do have a part to play, petitions have a part to play. All of these things do matter at a certain level. That's not where you're going to see the biggest change made.
It's not the end game.
You're not going to see the biggest end game change made, even with the elections. What we're going to see is more of that political intrigue about which direction is this going in. Has Mr. Modi really underestimated the love and power that he absorbs from a vast majority of his electorate that backs the direction he's taking things in? Has he underestimated how much he can get away with, if you like? And that will all be put to test in the election. I don't think any more than that will happen in the election. It will just be more political jostling to see, is this project a continued go light? Has it got the thumbs up? And the best places to look that, follow that whole happening and being covered is Nationality.
Yes.
We're going to ramp up a lot of our work going towards the election. We've done this at the last election as well. And there'll be a lot more in the English language where I'm going to solely cover it as much as I can.
Yeah, I think that's
as things are going on. Yeah, in the English language, and with a weekly podcast and with videos every week saying this has happened this week, this has happened. I wanted to do it even last week with Moosewala and the farmers' laws being repealed the week before that. But, my energy is still a bit zapped from everyday life. And also, I was a little bit. The problem I get is when I sometimes cover some stuff, people are like, "Why don't you cover this? This is really big."
Because you're one man, Harvey. It's okay. Like it's all right.
I've got too many connections. I've got too many connections who then hold it against me, and they're like, "Oh, you didn't even cover this, bruv. That happened." And and I'm like, "Geez, right? Like, you can't win." So it was a blessing in disguise. I'm pretty much just going to exclusively cover the election now going forward from like next week onwards. And as well as us, I would suggest following Sikh Siyasat. Although they don't write as much as they used to, they've kind of fallen away from being a news agency and turned into a little bit more of a activist group. But they're still there, and they publish a lot of news articles that you can read in English. So Google Sikh Siyasat and you can follow them. There's a newcomer to the news media space, which is kind of a crossbreed between opinion editorial and news reporting, which is called BAZ, B-A-Z, and it's in Canada. And that's a decent place to go. You'll find they have literally tons and tons of articles being published every single day. Now they're a startup. They don't have a roster of writers. Anyone can write for them. You can submit an article, and as long as it meets editorial approval, it'll be published. And so that's a decent place to follow up with stuff that's going on. You just won't. It's maybe not necessarily the best place to go if you wanted to have some consistency. Like
with
you come to
writing as well.
Yeah, if you come to Nationality, when you're reading, pretty much you're going to be reading me and Avtar in English and Cookie Gill and us speaking, even if it's just my name on it, it's all of our three thinking. So you're getting some consistency in we know this is his baggage. We know this is their baggage.
Yeah.
You don't get that with bars. Sometimes you're getting a writer that's a scholar in university, and sometimes you're getting some person who's like just some random kid that wants to start writing in the future and putting something together, as well as Punjab journalists who are on the ground. So it's a good place to go for a mix, right? That's not going to be like a mainstream kind of space to go to. As well as them, I would then urge people to follow, if you're on social media, you must follow Saffron Studio.
Yeah.
And Saffron Studio has been around for a long time, and they covered the Kisan Masla protest like better than anyone did. They always
Gagan,
had the best. Yeah, Gagan, that's it. They always had the best stuff going in terms of what was happening, the best coverage.
Local,
I was just Googling it at the same time because I knew I was going to get it wrong. It's Saffron Studios with an S on the end. So that's who you need to follow. And Saffron Studios will have every bit of news as it comes out. They'll be picking it up from whichever TV station in Punjab is dropping it, or which social media account's got it. They are a great gatherer, aggregator of all of this stuff, and you can follow them on Instagram and keep up to date with it. At the end of the day, go through their stories. You'll have caught up with all the going.
That would be great. Digestible news is helpful as well.
Yeah, the kind of thing I should do at Nationality, but I just don't want to simplify it to that level. I want
We've
people
already
to
had
have
a chat.
1 hour.
We will see, Harvy.
Yeah. But not simple. But not simple. It still won't be simplified, Indy. I want people to have what I've forced you guys to do, a 1 hour 45 podcast.
Yeah.
I've done it again.
Here.
I've done it again. Do you remember the start of the last time I spoke with you guys? And it was like, oh, let's get into that. Let's start that conversation on Bhangra comps.
Yeah.
And there went 1 hour, 25 minutes of your life.
I loved it. That was great. But this one's been even more informative for a lot of us who don't understand Indian politics or Punjab politics, and just getting a better overall view. I know you covered it briefly in the last podcast, but this has been helpful for this one. And then, if there's any big development, we'll obviously have you on again, sort of break it down again.
I was going to say part 3 is definitely going to be when that conversation happens behind closed doors, the outcome of that, Harvy's view on that. That's definitely going to be part 3.
Yeah. It's good that you just picked that out, actually, because it is going to happen, and it's going to be interesting to see eventually, I think it's going to happen sooner. Who steps up and makes that play? That's going to be interesting from a Sikh political world. Who's the one that steps forward and makes that play? And there's more than a few pretenders who are desperate for it now, but they haven't got that access and the reach. They haven't got the access and the reach, and but they want the limelight. So it'll be interesting to see when it happens. Then I'll definitely could give you guys a mention and say, oh, look, something's happened. Get me back on. You might not even know about it. So let's
more than happy to, man.
Around the election time, definitely I'll hit you guys up. Always enjoying catching up with what you guys do and seeing that it's going every week. So keep it going strong.
Forever, we will do. All right, Karan, anything to add?
Forever.
Cool. We'll leave it there, I think, guys. Karan, you happy? Yeah, sure.
I'm very happy. We just committed to doing a podcast forever, man. That's a big statement. but forever.
Thanks for joining us this week, guys.
Just before you finish, quick thing for listeners. Maybe 2 days ago, I messaged Indy. I was like, so let's take some time off over Christmas, huh? Like, we didn't know episode every week. He's like, you can't spare 1 hour a week. That's the savageness of the message that Indy sent. My wife was there. She had my phone, and she just said, you can't spare 1 hour a week. Cool, bro. And
you know what? Yeah, I don't like how you interpret the tone of what I said. I wrote that quickly.
You're so savage. Cool, bro. Full stop. You can't spare 1 hour a week. I was just like, I was like, oh, okay.
You completely misinterpreted that. This is why I don't like texting, because sometimes it comes across wrong, right? Obviously, I didn't mean it that way. I was like, Charlie, have your week off. It's cool. I'll carry on. I don't mind. I find this quite therapeutic.
Warrior.
It is only 1 hour.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And it's just 1 week I'm taking off.
From everything?
Yeah. Exactly.
You want to break? That's cool.
Okay,
not coaching any clients, complete switch off, all businesses, on hold.
No checking emails, switch off your phones, the whole thing.
Yeah, not a hospital, completely not a hospital, not coaching any clients, nothing, no meetings.
No, then props to you. That has to be done then. In your line of work, that's necessary. You have to do it, right?
No, I get it.
I
understand, doctor. I understand. Listen, Karan, it's okay. It's all right. I forgive you. Okay, I forgive you. However, Harvy did say 1 hour a week. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Thank you for this week, and thank you for listening, guys. If you've made this far, please leave us a message, a review, a like, a comment, whatever takes less than 1 minute of your
If you've got a question for Harvy, ask a bloody question.
Yes,
this is something we don't do enough, and actually you came really strong on this. This generation, start asking questions so you understand more, so you can form opinions, please.
Yep. Oh yeah,
please do. And follow Nationality on Instagram. He's also got his website, norjwandi.com. And that, I think, is everything. We will leave it there. Cheers, guys.